Hello everybody, welcome to Coco's Crochet. This is podcast number 2. Before we begin, Coco and I want to thank you all so much for joining us, for all your kind words in your comments, and for returning for all our videos. We couldn't be happier. So we will continue to make them so you can join us and we can continue on this crochet journey together. Now, I will put Coco down because as usual, she's ready for a rest. To be Coco for a day. Okay, I'll just pop her down for now and she'll probably see you later. Okay, today I thought I'd follow on from our first podcast and talk a little bit more about the Humble Granny Square, which is one of my total loves in the whole world. And as I mentioned in the first podcast, it was my very first project, but I didn't really give it as much love as I should have because I was, just trying to introduce ourselves. So I do have it here, which is my favorite blanket in the whole world, even though the colors are not what I would probably ever choose again, but they were meant to be unisex colors. I did make the big blocks and then the smaller blocks as well in a variety of colors. There we go. The YouTube video that I watched to make these, which I'm sure a lot of people have come across, was Bella Coco, and it was about a 7-year-old video. And I figured, well, if it's been around for that long, it must be working. And it was pretty much the first thing that popped up. So I will put it down in the description box. But at the time, I had no idea what I was doing other than I wanted to make a crocheted blanket and I wanted it to be a granny square. So off I popped to our local yarn store here in our area at Spotlight, and when I walked in, the only yarn that attracted me was the USA Spot Saver. Excuse me for a moment. This yarn came in so many colors and it felt so squishy, and just the thickness of it attracted me, I guess, being a first time crocheter for a very, very, very long time. It is I would say about a 10 ply, which is, I believe that equates to a worsted number 4 medium yarn overseas, and it does ask for a 5mm hook, which is a G hook. At the time, I had no hooks, and I did buy a 5mm hook. And since then, when I use this yarn, I prefer to use a J hook with it, a 6mm, but by no means did the 5, not work. It actually does make a tighter stitch, but I'm a fairly tight crocheter, I've realized. So using the J hook just gives it a nicer drape if I need something a little bit more drapier, but for a blanket, a 5mm was perfect. So off I went, not knowing what colors to buy and how many balls of each yarn. So I think at the time, just from memory, I purchased at least 4 balls from each color. And the lovely lady at the counter suggested that I get a lighter color to join it all together. So I did go for this beautiful silvery gray color. I wanted to do something like a black, but she said, no, it'll be way too dark. And at the time, I didn't understand what any of that meant. And since then, when I have worked with darker yarns, I've realized that she did me a huge favor by letting me know that it was better to choose something lighter. First of all, it made the other colors pop. And second of all, the darker the yarn, the harder it is to work with, as you're getting older. So this is my very, very first project. It did take me 3 months. I crocheted every night in bed. I don't know for how many hours, because I do work, through the day and, manage a home and a family, just like most of us do. But I was so adamant that I would finish it as quickly as I could. And when I started to make the different squares, then I thought, oh, hold on, I don't even have a design to mind. So then I thought, okay, let's put it down as a drawing and work out how many colors of each square that I needed to make. And I did have that little piece of paper for a very long time by my bedside. I don't know if I've put it anywhere because I am a bit of a hoarder and I am a scrapbooker as well. So possibly is lying around somewhere. I hope to find it one day. But I did manage to put together a design, and I call this my quilted looking crochet blanket because it looks like little quilt patches of quilt, patchwork put together to make a quilt, but it is crocheted, and I absolutely love it. So thank you for letting me, talk a little bit more about my first ever project, which I do love, and my family still uses it all the time. It lives on the lounge downstairs in our living room, and people just, walk around with it on sometimes like a cape. My son has been known to do that. My daughter snuggles up under it, and so does my partner, and I certainly throw it over my shoulders and keep myself warm when I'm watching a movie. So I will put this one down for now, but I would like to talk about other versions of the granny square because there are so many, and I have attempted a few, and I have enjoyed every single one of them. I just need to take to the next step now and actually finish some of the projects. I'm just going to pop this down one moment, but I will bring this one across, which I haven't made that long ago, possibly 6 months. It is granny squares once again, but when I sewed them together, so let me just show you, for example. Oh, that one's too hard to show you. How about here? Okay, so granny squares, traditional granny squares, and they're all made, I do have some photos here a bit closer for you. So they were all made using a light green and a dark green, which were just from some mill ends. And in total, I think this project would have cost, wow, all of $12, possibly 12 Australian dollars. And that was actually really fun to work out at the end of it, because you can make such a beautiful blanket, to have for your family and for yourself at such a low cost. So this one was actually made, as I said, about 6 months ago. I did the traditional granny squares, all of them varying in the amount of dark green they had in them. And then in the end, I sewed them on the diagonal. So this is what it pretty much looks like. I didn't follow a pattern for this at all. I did just see a photo on, I believe it was on Instagram, and they had it in different versions with different colors. And I was like, oh my goodness, that is so beautiful. The only challenge that I had, which I didn't think of at the time when I started making the granny squares, because you do sew them on as, little diamonds, I had to learn how to make the ones on the side, and the little triangle ones, which wasn't very hard to do. And I always say this story when I show people this blanket. It took me longer to sew in the ends than it did to crochet up the squares. Joining it was a lot of fun. I laid it out on our bed, and I did use all my stitch markers and even some safety pins when I ran out of stitch markers. At the time, I didn't have as many as I do now. And I laid it out, and strip by strip, I put them together, and then I sewed them all together. So this project in total probably took 2-3 weeks, crocheting most days, which was amazing. And I loved it, enjoyed it, would do it again in different colors. It's just beautiful. Highly recommend it. Then I thought, oh, okay, let's have a look at something, a little bit more florally. And of course my mind, because my daughter loves them as well, went to the sunflowers. And then, of course, I didn't, steer very far away from the USA Spot Saver yarn. And I had so many different colors that it was so easy to put together the colors that I needed to make this beautiful sunflower square. My daughter did request, excuse me, just one moment, fell on the floor. My daughter did request that I make some in just the plain colors as well. So imagine how beautiful this will be when they're all sewn together. all joined together, beg your pardon. So I'm hoping, you know, to work on that. I have put it to the side for a little bit because I have been, you know, working on other projects. But that's something I would love to complete. You know, I won't be ambitious and say before the end of this year, but certainly before next winter would be wonderful. And while I was working with all the different yarns, then this pattern popped up. And I was like, okay, I really need to give this a go, because I had so many scrap yarns, and this is like a love heart within a granny square. And because I have so many balls of yarn left over from all the different projects, I thought, well, let me just start putting these together. Pardon this one, the ends are not sewn in. So this is a project that could either become a nice little cardie or a top or even another blanket. So this is an ongoing one. So I just make them once again out of the USA Spot Saver, my favorite yarn. I have been using a 5mm hook for these ones as well, because, you know, just to you know, make sure that the pattern, that the heart is defined. So I will continue with those. So that's another project, another whip in the making. So I'd love to, you know, carry on with that. But with that one, I'm not so worried because I'm just putting it together as I go. This is a little book that I have with, it came with a magazine. The magazine is Simply Crochet, and this was like a little extra gift with purchase. It's just an example of how many different granny squares, you know, are available to us. And this is just a snippet. By no means is this, you know, an extensive collection, but 50, that's pretty cool. And even if I attempted a few more of those, that'd be great. So I do hold on to this and I keep it in my little library, and hopefully I'll get to some of those as well sooner than later. I did make a couple of other little projects which I have given away as gifts to my mum. And with her, all I did was I made a continuous granny in some of her favorite colors. I have learnt since then that to make sure that the granny square doesn't, you know, tilt a little bit, I should be turning it each row, which I will do when I make a big granny square next time, because I don't like the fact that it had a little bit of, you know, the pointier ends. Not that my mum complained at all. She absolutely loves her blanket. And I did put pom-poms on the end of it. I did crochet little pom-poms. So it took away from the, you know, that look a little bit. So that was that one. And for my partner's mum, can't have anyone missing out, I did make her one as well in some of her colors that she likes. Very Christmassy. And this is just when I was, you know, piecing it together as the, you know, trying to design the pattern as such when, you know, I was making each one. So that was the process, which I thought I might share with you. So they were a couple of gifts, granny square, you know, blankets that I've given away and have thoroughly enjoyed making them. And they're being used all the time, which makes me so happy. So a follow on from that then became, the granny stitch is just one of my favorite stitches to use. And then I worked out how to make the granny ripple. I love this blanket. I love the colors. I enjoyed making it so much so that I did, excuse my head, I did make a sampler originally, just so that I could get the pattern in my head. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do with this little tiny sampler? It's not big enough to be a blanket for anybody really. So I put a couple of straps on it, and now it is a whip bag. So there you go. Don't ever throw anything away. So this one, I once again saw the colors that I fell in love with in a post on Instagram. And then I thought, oh, okay, how do I do this? So then I just simply went on YouTube and found a tutorial on how to do the granny ripple. And then I just put the colors together, and this was the end result. So absolutely love, 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 love this one. Just a suggestion, if you do want to make a granny ripple, use your scraps. It's a good way to get rid of them. Always look good. Now with a granny square, it depends on the look you want to go for. I personally generally go for the granny square that has one chain there and a 2 chain border, corner, beg your pardon. But a lot of people, and I don't mind this look at all, prefer the no chain there and the 1 chain in the corner. The difference being one is holier than the other. So that's something to keep in mind, to play around with that. If you know you want a project that has less holes in it or smaller holes, go for the one with the no chain and the 1 chain. And then this is a variation of the solid granny. I think it's beautiful. And then I thought, I have never experimented making a granny square in anything other than like an acrylic, you know, worsted weight yarn. And then I had all that plush yarn that I have made. With this, I make a lot of corner to corner, which we'll talk about in another video. This is so soft. At first I thought, oh, you can't really see the stitches. But you actually can. So that's something to keep in mind. For me, certainly, that you can experiment with different yarns and not just stick to your, you know, 8, 10 or 12 ply acrylics only for when you're, you know, making your granny squares. So they're those projects. Then I thought, oh, everybody is making a market bag. Why shouldn't I? So this is my market bag. It's made from, all made from Flinders yarn, just cotton 8-ply yarn. And what we had to do, the pattern that I used was from Bella Coco, our Crochet Society, or Bella Coco. I will link it down in the description box for you. It was, I believe, a crochet along. You could buy a kit with all the colors, but I just purchased my own. I think there was about 8 different colors for to make all the little squares, and then the main color, probably about just as many balls of that, because you did have to double it up. This is an 8-ply, which I believe is a number 3 weight yarn, or a DK overseas. And it does call for a 4mm hook, but from memory, I believe we used a 5mm hook or a G hook. Please don't quote me on the hook size until you see the pattern. Because we had to double the yarn, we may have gone up a size in the hook. So keep that in mind. So making this bag was a real challenge for me. Not the granny squares, but piecing it together. So that took longer for me than the actual crocheting of all the squares and the handle. Just putting it together, I could not get my mind around it. And in the end, I'm sure that I've got, you know, different colors touching where they shouldn't be, like, you know, the actual patches, the squares. But that's okay. I don't mind that at all. My ultimate goal was just to finish this, because it was something that I really wanted to make. And now I have, and I love using it. It's beautiful. I don't put very heavy things in it because I don't like it to sag. I don't know how to line my bags as yet. Maybe one day, who knows? So yes, I did, you know, could tick that off my list of things to do. And I would certainly make it again. But next time I might just do like a different square, but all the same color, just so that my mind doesn't have to work so hard when I'm piecing it together. It was challenging, believe me. Anyway, so that's that on the market bag. Highly recommend it, and I will pop the pattern down in the description box for you, as I said. for me at this stage, this is pretty much, most of the things I have to share with you that relate to, the humble granny square or granny squares. As you can see, there is a huge variety out there, and I've only touched on just a few. There are many, many, many more, I'm sure, and then I'm sure I will come across them as well. Please share in the comments down below, or send me a photo to my email address. It's in the description box if you'd like to share some of your projects with me, and if you'd like, I can actually showcase them and show everybody as well. That way we can all be inspired by each other's makes, and continue this fun journey together, not just me showing you what I've made. Once again, as always, thank you so much for tuning in and watching us. Coco and I really appreciate it, and we hope to see you again in the near future. And as always, keep safe, keep smiling, and just enjoy every single day and every single moment. Thank you once again. See you soon. Bye-bye.